I just filmed my entire intro to this video and it was on time lapse and not video. What am I doing with my life right now? It's been a little while, clearly, since I've been on camera because I pre-filmed a couple videos because obviously Thanksgiving was happening and I was traveling, seeing family, eating a lot of good food. So I hope everyone out there also had a great Thanksgiving. So clearly, I'm very underprepared, and now I'm all discombobulated. Here are the books I read. Again, this is the most books I've read in like last month in October. I also read seven, which I read seven more this month, which is just completely crazy because seven is the highest books in 1 month I've ever read in my entire life. And now I just had two 7 book reading months back to back. Like I'm just unhinged and I'm having the best time. I've started to trick myself into reading more and in a good way. In a good way. I am not ever pressuring myself to read, but I have been working on not scrolling on my phone or mindlessly just watching TV and instead picking up a book. And so I've been tricking myself if I catch myself scrolling or I'm just watching TV for a long time, I'll tell myself, okay, pick up the book for one chapter. If I'm not having a good time after one chapter, then I can move on. I can go back to my scrolling or my TV. And what ends up happening is I read for hours. I then, next thing I know, 100 pages have gone by and I'm having a great time with the book. So it's been a great way for me to trick myself into reading more. And that shows with the 7 books that I read this month. So let's get into our stats. All right, here's our stats. We had 7 books, 2,547 pages, which is about 85 pages per day, which is pretty interesting. And we had 2 new authors, 5 authors I've read from previously, 3 were physically read, and 4 were done through audiobook. 4 were a part of a series, and 3 were standalones. We had 2 poetry, 1 dark romance, 1 psychological thriller, and 3 fantasy. Alrighty, let's start off with Shatter by Tahereh Mafi. This is a young adult fantasy novel about our main character, Juliet, who has the power to hurt or kill with a single touch. So if she touches someone, it is very painful, and if she touches them for long enough, they die. In this series, there's a lot of them actually, maybe like 7, 8, or 9. There's quite a few. And in this series, we have the reestablishment that is the people who have taken over the nation, and they are wanting to use Juliet as a weapon. So they are wanting her to torture people for them, and she doesn't want to hurt anyone, so she is trying to escape. There's a love triangle in this. There's a sort of found family. There is her superpower and magical abilities. I did give this 3 stars. I did listen to this through audiobook, and I would suggest reading it physically because the narrator was fine for the audiobook, but our main character is 17, and the way the narrator is speaking, it sounds as if Juliet is 10, and if she's supposed to be 17, it doesn't feel like it matches up very well. This is also a no spice book or possibly series. There is some make out kissing scenes, but that's as far as it goes if that's something you're interested in. I am excited to continue in the series, and I'm excited to see what happens with Juliet and possibly this love triangle. I have seen some spoilers for this, so I do know who she ends up with, but I'm not upset about it. So that's why I'm also still interested in continuing, even though this was only a 3-star. Next up, we got Now You're Mine by Morgan Bridges. This is the second book in the duology. The first one is Once You're Mine. I read this in October and gave it 4 stars. This one, unfortunately, was not as good. So this one picks up right where we ended at the first book, and I was having a good time. The spice was good, and I'm all for a morally gray main character. This is a stalker dark romance, and the stalking, the murdering people, the stealing, whatever it is, I'm down for. Like, doesn't even faze me. But the red flags in here were just fucked up. Like, that's the best way I can put it. Like, it just like wasn't necessary. The whole stalker romance is more about him being obsessed with her. This one was way more possessive than obsessive, and I just wasn't vibing with it as much as I wanted to. I gave it a 2.5 star, which technically a 2.5 is average in a 5-star rating. Like, that's right in the middle, but like my average is a 3. Next up, we got A Reign of Rose by Kate Golden. This is the 3rd book in the trilogy. The first one is A Dawn of Onyx, and the second one is A Promise of Peridot. So this one is finishing out. I didn't love this as much as I loved the first one. This one follows our main characters right after the cliffhanger of the second book. The cliffhanger from the second book I definitely did not expect, and definitely made me really intrigued to pick this one up. We had some more characters that came into play. We had some more magical abilities and creatures come into play. It's hard to discuss what happens in this book without spoiling the entire series. I did feel like this one ended in a good way, in the sense of it kind of wrapped everything up in a nice little bow and everything turned out great. But when the book series has such high stakes and then it feels like the characters always seem to get out of these stakes, it's kind of weird, because you're like, okay, I'm rooting for the main characters and I want the main characters to succeed, but if everything that they come across they always succeed at, then it's like, not really worried at all that they're gonna get past it, because they've gone past every other super high stake that shouldn't be possible. But overall, I gave it a 4 star. I still love this series. I probably would actually give it a 3.5 stars. And if I was gonna be more harsh with it, I would give it a 3, but because I love the series as a whole, I'm gonna bump it up to a 4. We do get dual POVs from the 2 main characters, which I love. I love books with both the POV of our main girl and our main guy, and it goes back and forth and they're finding their way back to each other. You get to see the feelings of both sides, which is always entertaining, and I feel like helps the story progress along and keeps you wanting more. This was definitely action-packed, had some heartbreak, and I'm glad I read the series. I will definitely pick up anything Kate Golden writes. This is her first series. Just crazy that it's so well done. Next up, we got Love by Night by S.K. Williams. Looks like my light is going to make this reflect pretty good, but it's so dark so early. And the light that I have in this guest room is just not very good, so it would be completely dark and you wouldn't be able to see me if I didn't have a light behind the camera. But this is poetry about love, and I was really excited for this because I have been looking for more poetry that isn't so sad. But this one unfortunately did not do it for me. This was a 2 star. I am very upset about it. It felt like this was like very run-on sentence, stream of consciousness, not as artistic writing. I feel so terrible for saying that, but it just didn't feel as like artistic poetry. It felt like it should be just full sentences and just called Love Letters by Night, because it wasn't so much that what they were saying was bad, but it just felt like they cut out words in a sentence and it just didn't really flow as well, and it felt like some of the poems it was like 2 poems were squished together on 1 page when they should have just been 2 separate pages, and it just wasn't working for me, unfortunately. The second poetry I read this month was Winter Roses After Fall by Robert M. Drake and R.H. Sin. This one I love the cover with the water bottle and flower. It is so pretty. I gave this one 3 stars. I gave the section from Robert and Drake 2.5 stars, and I gave RH Sin section 3.5, so that would be a 3-star. Here are my favorite pages. Oh no, you're not going to be able to see. Oh, there you go. And here are my favorite pages for Love by Night. Not very many, but still a couple. And this one, I wish that the synopsis of poetry was better and wasn't so vague, because usually, and maybe it's me, but the synopsis says, come winter, you will find that it is still possible to bloom. So to me, that feels like it would be talking about just being yourself and blooming and into your own and wanting to be better and all the good things, which is great. But this poetry was more about believing in yourself and moving past relationships that are not good for you. And that is important, but I feel like I keep picking up poetry about that, and that it feels like every poetry that I read is about that, and I just don't relate to it. Thankfully, I don't relate to it, so I'm just not enjoying it as much. And usually what I do when I go buy poetry is I go into the bookstore, and then I'll flip through and I'll read 1 or 2 poetry pages, and if I like it, then I'll buy it. Because if I'm reading part of it and I'm enjoying the way the writing is, I am liking so far what I'm reading, then I feel like picking up the book. But between doing that and reading the synopsis and then still coming across these books that are about toxic relationships, I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong, I guess. Still 3-star. I still had a good time. I still had enough pages that I enjoyed, but I just don't know where to look for more in-depth poetry themes. Maybe Goodreads would be better to look up, but that's, I don't know. Clearly I don't know what I'm doing. But 3 stars. I will still pick up, or I'm interested in picking up more from these 2 authors. And nothing else really to say about that. Moving on. And next up, second to last, we got A Court of Silver Flames by Sarah J. Maas. This is the 5th one in A Court of Thorns and Roses series. This one is supposedly there's going to be another one, but right now this is the end of the series that is currently out. And this was great. This was over 750 pages, which is just crazy. And I did not feel like it was too long. I did not feel like it was dragging. We're following along with one of the sisters, Nesta, and her story, and I thought it was such a good time. I enjoyed this way more than I thought I would. I gave this 5 stars, which I did not expect, because I didn't love Nesta's character more than our main character Feyre, but I just loved her journey in this. It was good banter, it was good romance, spice, it was good pacing. I loved her journey of the stairs in here. So she is going through a lot of mental health, depression, and just there's a lot of things that have changed in her life. So she is just dealing with a lot. And so her friends pretty much give her an ultimatum that you can't be throwing your life away like this anymore. So they put her in the House of Wind, which is 10,000 steps in the tallest tower, essentially. And she is essentially, over time, she gets a found family, she starts working, she starts developing a romance with someone, and over the course of the book, she is starting to train and work out. So she is working on trying to make it these 10,000 steps down. So over the course of the book, you know, maybe she only gets 100 steps down and then goes back up. And then she goes 150 steps and then goes back up. And so over the course of the book, she's getting better and better and goes farther and farther down those stairs. And it's such a great way to show progression of time in a book. And I love this. I did not expect myself to love it so much, but I did. I love the romance in this. I have seen some theories about the romance of this at the end, and I want to plug my ears. Please don't say the things that people are saying. I love our 2 main characters together, and my heart will be broken if that ever changes. So keep your comments to yourself. But I loved this. 5 stars, and I'm so glad to finish the series and be a part of all the girlies and knowing what's going on. I am excited to at one point read the next one coming out, which who knows at this point, at this rate, it's probably gonna be 2026, 2027 by the time it actually comes out. Who knows? All this means is now I can move on to the Throne of Glass series, which I am super excited about. And last up, we got Verity by Colleen Hoover. This book is about Verity, who is an author, and Verity has gotten into a car accident, so she is unable to finish the remaining 3 books in her series. So they hire our main character, Lowen, to finish out the last 3 books. Lowen then goes into the house where Verity and her husband are living. Verity is mentally and physically handicapped or in a vegetable state, so she has at-home nursing care, and the husband is there in the house showing Lowen around. Lowen is going through the office trying to find stuff for her to write these books. There's a very eerie, odd vibe that happens throughout this book. Things get creepy. There's suspicious stuff that's happening. You're not sure what's real and what's not real, and it was an interesting time. I picked this book out for my episode 2 of my Read It or Unhaul, so if you want to go see what other books I picked for that video, go ahead and jump over there. But I was entertained. It was definitely a page turner. I wanted to know what happened, and it was a 3-star for me. I did feel like the ending fell a little short, and I was kind of not as happy. I guess I wanted it to wrap up just a little bit more, but ultimately I still had a good time. It wasn't very long. I'm glad I got around to it. If you do plan to read this, I would suggest looking up some trigger warnings for it. I haven't seen a lot of people talk about those trigger warnings. I do mention them in my video of the Read It or Unhaul, so look out for that if that's something that may bother you. But I would definitely recommend for people who like psychological thrillers. And there we have it. Another great month of reading. We had a 5-star, a 4-star, 3 stars, another 3-star, a 2.5-star, and a 2-star. I hope to see you around. Feel free to jump over to my channel if you want to watch any other content I put out. Feel free to like, subscribe, and comment down below. It helps me out a ton. And I hope that everyone out there has a happy Christmas coming up and had a happy Thanksgiving. And I'll talk to you later. Bye!